Hello and welcome back. In the last session we talked about org-wide defaults, and you might remember that we saw a checkbox called Grant Access using hierarchies. Well, in this session we're going to dive into exactly what that means. We're going to break down roles and the role hierarchy in Salesforce, what they are, what they do, and why they're such an important part of controlling record access. So what are roles and what is the role hierarchy? Roles define where a user sits in the company from a data access point of view, not job titles, not departments. It's all about who should see what records. Each user is assigned one and only one role. The role hierarchy is the structure that connects these roles together, and when it's turned on for an object, it allows record access to flow upwards through the tree. Think of the role hierarchy as less of an organisational chart of who is who and more of a data access chart. Here's how it works. Users at a higher level in the hierarchy automatically get access to records owned by users beneath them. That access is read-only by default, unless permissions allow for editing. We talked about CRED permissions when we discussed object access. It's enabled through the grant access using hierarchy setting, which is always on for standard objects like accounts and contacts, but it can be turned on and off for custom objects. Think of it like a visibility ladder. If you're higher up, you can look down and see more data, but if you try to look sideways or you try to look up, then no, you won't. So let's walk through a story together to bring this to life, and I want you to meet Jennifer. Jennifer is the new admin at TechFlow Manufacturing, and she's inherited a bit of a mess of a Salesforce org. The company's grown from 50 to 500 employees, but their Salesforce org hasn't kept up. And here's what she's found. Sales managers can't see their team's opportunities. Service supervisors can't see the cases that their agents are working on. VPs have no visibility into regional performance, and finance can't get to the right account records for collections. After a bit of investigation, Jennifer discovered the root of the problem. The org-wide defaults are set to private, but there's no role hierarchy in place, and everything is being shared manually one record at a time. It's a total nightmare and a waste of time. To fix this, Jennifer builds a role hierarchy that mirrors the management structure. She puts regional VPs at the top, district managers are below them, area managers are beneath that, and sales and support reps are at the bottom. She also enables grant access using hierarchies for the relevant custom objects. Now everything flows beautifully. Sales managers can coach using real-time pipeline data, service leaders can monitor open cases, and finance gets the visibility that they need without asking IT every day. It's cleaner, faster, and way more secure. So how is this configured? Well, let's head into Salesforce and take a closer look. The best practice before you make any changes to a role hierarchy or you build one out is to actually plan the structure. So you want to start by mapping out the data access needs, not just the HR organisational chart, but think more in terms of who needs to see whose records. Now I'd recommend doing this using a whiteboard or a tool like Lucidchart. And when you're in Salesforce, you can easily find roles in the role hierarchy. You just go to Setup, so you go to the gear icon and you hit Setup. Then, in the Quick Find search bar, you're going to search for roles. And you can open up roles which is just underneath users. If you are just taking a look at the role hierarchy for the first time, you'll get a welcome page that will give you a couple of examples and some more information. Now I'd recommend that you take some time to read through the examples, and then when you're done, you can hit the Setup Roles button, which will take you to this screen. And here is where we would be able to see our role hierarchy. And the first thing that I want to show you here is the different views that you can have. So if we look over here on the right hand side, you'll see that we're looking at a tree view because we've got Show in Tree View. If we open that up, we can look at a sorted list view, or we could look in a list view. So you can see we have different options, different ways we can see it. Now for me, I tend to find that tree view is the easiest for me to understand, but you can use whatever it is that you prefer to use. Now what we also have here when we use the tree view is the options to collapse all, expand all, and look at things individually. So if we hit expand all, that's going to show all of the roles that we have in our role hierarchy. And if we hit collapse all, that's just going to collapse them all, so it makes it easier and cleaner to work with. And if we do that, we can start looking at opening them up individually. So we can use the expand button and we can just click next to where we want, and you'll see that will start opening them up. And we can just use the minimize button to minimize them as well. Now I'm going to use the expand all button because I want us to see all of the different roles that we have. And when I do that, you can see all the different roles that we've got, and next to each role we have a couple of options. So we have edit, where we use to edit the role, we have delete to delete the role, and we have assign to assign users to that role. So if we just hit edit next to CEO, you'll see we have the label, we have the role name, we have who this role reports to, so who's going to be above them in the role hierarchy, and then we have the role name as it displays on reports. We'd also have a couple more settings underneath here, which we'll touch on shortly. But if we just hit cancel, and we'll come out of that, you'll see the other options we've got, which is delete, which you can guess what that's going to do, and then we also have assign as well. So if we select assign, you'll be able to see that we can assign users to this role. So we can assign them directly from here if we wanted to, and we can remove them. What we've also got is the role hierarchy on the right hand side, which is just a nice reference point for us to be able to see what it is that we're doing without having to flick between different screens. But we're just going to select cancel here. And if we wanted to add a new role, we can do that fairly simple. If we select add role, which we'll just select under the CEO here, you'll see that we need to give it a label. So we'll call this CDO. The role name is automatically populated. We can select who the role reports to, so that's directly who they report to, who is directly above them in the role hierarchy. And then we can set the role name as displayed on reports, which we'll just put as CDO. And we'll hit save. Now once we create this new role, we can take a look at it in more detail. We can see we've got the label, we've got the role name, who the role reports to, how the role name is displayed on reports, when it was last modified and by who it was last modified, and sharing groups that it's part of. But what we also have are some settings for opportunity and case access. And at the moment, we have these two settings as users in this role can edit all opportunities or cases associated with accounts that they own, regardless of who owns the opportunities or the case. Now these settings control whether users in this role should be able to access or edit opportunities or cases that are related to accounts that they own, even if they don't own the opportunity or the case directly. We can change these, but to do that we need to change the org-wide defaults for opportunities or cases from public read-write to private or public read-only. But before we do that, I just want to point out what we can see below, which is we can see users in the CDO role. And here we could assign users much like we was doing before. So as you can see, there's different ways in which we can assign users to roles. Now what we're going to do, just so we can take a better look at the opportunity access and case access options, is we're going to edit our org-wide defaults. And we're going to make them more restrictive, because remember, we set them at the most restrictive and then we use tools such as the roles and role hierarchies and sharing rules and team sharing to open up record access. So we're going to go to the quick find search bar, and we're going to go in there and we're going to type sharing. From here, we'll open up sharing settings, and then we're going to hit edit. Now at the moment, you can see that for opportunity and for case, we have these wide open. So we have them as public read-write or public read-write transfer. We're going to set them to private. So we'll set them to private, and we'll just hit save. We'll hit OK, and that's going to start saving. So it's going to start recalculating them now, as you can see from this yellow warning we've got. Now when we change these, Salesforce need to recalculate the sharing throughout the Salesforce org and then reflect those changes that we've made. So it can take a few minutes. So what we're going to do is we're going to head back to roles. So we'll double click into the quick find search bar. We'll type in role, we'll open up roles, and we're just going to select edit next to CDO. Now you'll see we now have these options for opportunity access and case access, but it doesn't always happen that quick. So if you come here to edit it and you don't see opportunity access and case access, just give it a minute, refresh your Salesforce org, so refresh your browser, and then when you hit edit on the role again, you'll be able to see it. But like I said, it can take a couple of minutes, so just be a little bit patient. Now for opportunity access and for case access, we have 3 different options. So the first option is that users in this role cannot access opportunities that they do not own and that are associated with accounts that they do own. So that is where they don't get access, so you can lock it down like that. We have users in this role can view all opportunities associated with accounts that they own, regardless of who owns the opportunities. So this opens it up a little bit and gives read access. And then the final one we have is users in this role can edit all opportunities associated with accounts that they own, regardless of who owns the opportunities. So this means that users can edit them, so we're giving them read-write access. And it's the same settings for cases as well. So this is how you can really control who can access what child records of accounts that they own. It's great for when you really need to fine-tune record access. So we're just going to hit cancel there, and we're just going to go back to the role hierarchy. And now that you understand a little bit about the roles, I want to talk you through a couple of scenarios here in terms of how record access can be opened up. And I want you to remember, and I want you to think of the role hierarchy as more of a data access hierarchy. Don't think of it as your traditional organizational HR chart. Think of it as a hierarchy of who should see whose records. And let's walk through a couple of examples. So we're going to start with the Director of Direct Sales. Now the Director of Direct Sales is above the Eastern Sales Team and the Western Sales Team. That means that the Director of Direct Sales can see records of users who have the Eastern Sales Team or the Western Sales Team role. We then have the Director of Channel Sales, and they can see the records of the Channel Sales Team users. So that's how it works. See how it's rolling up. So Channel Sales Team records can be accessed by the Director of Channel Sales Team. However, the Director of Direct Sales cannot see the records of the Director of Channel Sales, and that's because they're the same level of them in the hierarchy. Remember, record access flows up. It's from top to bottom or bottom to top, however you want to look at it, but it doesn't go horizontally. It doesn't go from left to right. So just remember that access levels roll up. Now, because the Director of Channel Sales is at the same level as the Director of Direct Sales, the Channel Sales Team's records are not viewable to the Director of Direct Sales. And that's because they're on a different hierarchy. So they've got different subordinates. So just be aware of that. There's a couple of nuances in there as well. Now, the VP of North American Sales, they can see records of all of them. They can see the Director of Channel Sales, the Channel Sales Team, the Director of Direct Sales, the Eastern Sales Team, and the Western Sales Team. And that's because they're all underneath the VP of American Sales or North America Sales. So just be aware of that as well. You need to make sure you understand how the access flows. So hopefully that all makes sense. But let's do one more example, and this time we're going to look at the SVP of Sales and Marketing here. Now, underneath the SVP of Sales and Marketing, they can see all the records of the VP of International Sales, the VP of Marketing and the Marketing Team, the VP of North America Sales, the Director of Channel Sales, the Channel Sales Team, the Director of Direct Sales, the Eastern Sales Team, and the Western Sales Team, because they're all underneath him or her in the role hierarchy. So the role hierarchy is really useful when it comes to sharing records. When you do share a record, either manually or through other sharing features such as sharing rules, you can select to share with roles or roles and internal subordinates and other options. Now that means that if you need to share a record with the Eastern and Western Sales Team here, then what you could do is you could use the option to share with roles and subordinates of the Director of Direct Sales, and then that will give access to those below them, the Eastern and Western Sales Team. Now we've covered a bit of ground here, so let's talk about some of the limitations and considerations. One role per user. There's no multi-role assignments. If someone works across teams, use other sharing features such as sharing rules or public groups, but users can only have one role. It doesn't grant permissions, so just because a user sees the record doesn't mean that they can edit it. You'll still need to assign proper cred permissions via profiles or permission sets, or using the opportunity and case access options. There's no peer access, so users at the same level in the hierarchy can't see each other's records unless you add sharing rules. Think of the role hierarchy as vertical sharing from top to bottom and not horizontal sharing from left to right. Standard objects always use hierarchies. You can't turn this off even if you want to. But be aware of performance issues. Salesforce recommends keeping hierarchies to under 10 levels deep. Any more and you may see an impact on the speed of your org. Field level security still applies, so even if they can see the record, fields may still be hidden. And changes cascade, so if you move someone higher up in the tree, they'll suddenly see more data, so please be careful. Let's wrap this up with a couple of the things that you need to remember. Roles determine record visibility, not what you can do with that record. Role hierarchies share access upwards, so managers can see their team's records. The use grant access using hierarchies must be enabled to do this. Now it's on by default for standard objects and it can't be turned off. However, for custom objects, it can be toggled on and off. And remember, it's one user, one role, so keep it simple. You can combine roles with profiles, permission sets, and sharing rules for full access controls. So now let's take a look at a challenge to make sure you understand roles and the role hierarchy. And you've just started as the new Salesforce administrator at a company called GetForce Certified. The org-wide defaults for opportunities are set to private, and the role hierarchy is being used to open up access. Now you receive a request from the Director of Direct Sales, James, and he says, I can't see any opportunities owned by the Eastern and Western sales team, and neither can my new International Sales Team Manager, Maya. When you check the role hierarchy, you notice that James is assigned to the correct role. He's assigned to the Director of Direct Sales. The Eastern and Western sales team sit at the bottom of the hierarchy, which is correct. But Maya isn't in the hierarchy at all, and there's no role for International Sales Manager. So the requirement for you here is that Maya needs to be able to see the opportunities for both the Eastern and Western sales team, but she shouldn't be able to see the records for the Director of Direct Sales. So how can you solve this? I want you to pause the video and have a think. Do you need to touch or change the org-wide defaults? What does grant access using hierarchies do here? Where should you place the new role in the role hierarchy? So have a think about them, and then when you're ready, we'll carry on with the solution. So I want you to pause the video and give it a go. So we'll go through the solution together in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. And we're back. So this is what you need to do. You need to create a new role called International Sales Manager. You need to place it above the Eastern and Western sales team roles, so they roll up to it. And then you want to make sure that the International Sales Manager role reports to the Director of Direct Sales. And then, of course, you need to make sure that Maya is assigned that role. That way, access will flow upwards. It will go from the Eastern and Western sales team to the International Sales Manager, and then from the International Sales Manager to the Director of Direct Sales. So we're going to head into Salesforce and we're going to build that out together. So here we are in Salesforce, and the first thing we want to do is we want to check that the org-wide defaults are set correctly. So we're going to go to the gear icon and we're going to hit Setup. Then we're going to go to the Quick Find search bar, and we're going to type in sharing. And we'll open up sharing settings here. Now if we take a look at the org-wide defaults, we can see that the opportunity access is private. So we know that that's correct. And because it's a standard object, the grant access using hierarchies is set as true, because it's always set as true for standard objects. So now that we know that the org-wide defaults are correct, we want to check the role hierarchy. So we'll go to the Quick Find search bar, and we're going to type in roles, and we'll open up roles there. And we're just going to expand all. Now if we scroll down, we can see that the Eastern sales team and the Western sales team's roles already exist, and they're under the Director of Direct Sales. But there's nothing in between them, and that's what we need to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new role. So we'll select Add Role here. Then for the label, what we're going to do is we're going to put International Sales Manager. And I'm just going to copy that, which you'll see in a second. We'll select role name. It's automatically populated. We can see that the role directly reports to the Director of Direct Sales, which is correct. And then for the role name, as displayed on opportunities, we're going to set that as the International Sales Manager. So I'm just pasting in there what I copied before. Now we could configure the opportunity access to whatever level we wanted it to, but we're just going to leave it as read-write. So, that the users who have this role can edit all the opportunities that are associated with accounts that they own, regardless of who owns the opportunities. And we'll hit save. Now, what we can do here is we can assign the user to the role. So we're going to assign users to the role, and we're going to find Maya. So I'm just going to go to all users. We've got Maya. We'll add Maya across, and we'll hit save. So we know Maya now has the correct role. So we're going to go back to the role hierarchy and just make sure that this is correct. Now when we scroll down, we can see that something isn't right here, because the Eastern Sales Team, the International Sales Manager, and the Western Sales Team are all on the same level. So they're all in a line, which means that access isn't going to work because there's no hierarchy there. So what we need to do is we need the International Sales Manager to be above the Eastern Sales Team and the Western Sales Team. So what we'll do is we're going to edit the Western Sales Team here. We're going to look at who this role reports to. You'll get a little pop-up, and then we're going to go to the International Sales Manager. We'll hit select, we'll hit save, and if we take a look now, we can see we're starting to see the hierarchy. So we just need to do that with the Eastern Sales Team too. So who this role reports to, we'll select that as the International Sales Manager, and we'll hit save. And if we scroll down, this is perfect. This is exactly what we want. So now Maya will be able to see all the opportunities owned by users in the Eastern and Western Sales Team. And James, who's the Director of Direct Sales, will also have visibility since he's above Maya in the hierarchy. But Maya will not be able to see the records of James because James is above them in the hierarchy. So hopefully that's all made sense. If you need to go through this a couple of times, please do, because it's really important that you understand roles and the role hierarchy.